Okay, so we've done modeling, and let's move on and do a little brainstorming. Okay, does everyone have a homework planning sheet? A brainstorming sheet? Just pretend like you do. Just pretend like this is it. What I'd like you to do here is on this list, you can start with some examples of transitional warnings. In 5 minutes, it'll be time to get ready for bed. In 10 minutes, it'll be time to come to the dinner table. Write down and talk about as a group as many different examples as you can think of transitional warnings. So talk about them as a group and write them down. And then move on, and you can see we have some examples of when-then. When you've got your room cleaned up, then you can watch television. When your homework's done, then you can go out and play with your friends. So try to think of some examples of when-thens that you could use around your house. So talk about transitional warnings, talk about when-then, and write as many down as you can think of as a group. Okay? Go ahead. Okay, let's, in just a minute, we'll come back together as a large group. Okay, assume it's been a couple of minutes. Here we go. Let's start with Lori's group. Lori, what was an example of a transitional warning that your group came up with? I know you didn't have time, so just make it up.
So we're going to eat dinner in 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes, it's going to be time for dinner. This group, a different one? Okay, after this TV show is over, then it's time for your bath. This group, Greg? Okay, 15 minutes, time to get ready for bed. This group? 10 minutes, time to turn off the TV, get ready for bed. This group?
5 minutes, we're going to start on your homework.
5 minutes, it'll be time to start on your homework. Now, let me get out of role. One of the things for younger kids, time is oftentimes sort of a vague construct. And so it's often helpful for parents and for you to pay attention to concrete examples. So the ending of a program, for example, is a nice transitional point for younger kids, or finishing a page in a book is a nice breaking point. Some parents like to use timers, or they have large clocks. They're trying to teach kids about time, but oftentimes it's important for parents not to speak in relatively vague terms. And sometimes parents will say, well, in a few minutes it'll be time to get ready for bed. And so you're going to want to try to make it as concrete as you possibly can. So if you hear examples of when this television program is over, then it'll be time to get ready for bed, or when you get to the next level in a game, then it'll be time to get started on your homework. Those kinds of concrete transition points are helpful for kids. Okay, so your group? Yeah. Okay, so when you get your broccoli, there we go, came back to that. When your broccoli's finished, then you can have one of the cupcakes that David made. This group, a different example?
We had, well, when you're finished cleaning your room, you can ride your bike.
Okay. When you get your room cleaned up, then you can ride your bike. And again, your job as a leader is just to summary model these. And you may have to tune it up a little bit. The common one is if you don't get your homework done, then you can't watch television. And you as a leader would say, When your homework's done, then you can watch television. And your job as a leader is also to model that firm tone of voice. It's warm, but it's firm. When your room's cleaned up, then you can watch television. And the gestures and some of the facial communication, that may be helpful. So parents are going to learn a lot from doing that. So the more you go around, the more opportunities you have to give examples, the better. So really in skill acquisition, the trick is overlearning. And you work on an idea and work on it and work on it and work on it and work on it until it really becomes almost automatic for parents. So overlearning is really important during the brainstorming exercise. And we'd ask an example of an attributional question at this point. Question?
Yeah, about the tone, do you find that it varies with parents of different age children on acquiring that calm and firm voice? Do you find that it's easier for parents of younger kids to practice that?
That's a really good question. I think there's a natural tendency for adults to speak in a little warmer and softer tone to very young kids. As kids get older and parents have had more difficulty with them, I think parents begin to lose that tone, and I think you have to really work on it with adolescents, and certainly be my experience. So yeah, I think but it's important. Let me just say something. You may have a group like this, and supposing you have a parent that you know has an adolescent around the house, and you're working on a program with 8-year-olds. One of the things you can do to make the program seem more useful to those parents is to say, I can see how you can work on this with Greg as an 8-year-old, but I know some of you have teenagers around the house. Is when then something that you could use with teenagers? And they'll think about it and say, well, yeah, what would be an example? Well, when you do this, then, et cetera. What about ignoring? Is that something you'd ever use with teenagers? Oh, yeah, a lot. Planning ahead. So almost everything that we do is something that would be useful with teenagers, but parents will not necessarily make that leap, not automatically. So as a leader, you can often say, is that something you could, 15, 16-year-olds still need that kind of attention? Is it still important for them to hear from you? And parents will think about that, and generally they'll say, well, yeah, probably. How about adults? I mean, as adults, is that something that's good to hear? As a parent, is it helpful to hear that? So it's often helpful to get parents to think at different developmental stages, is that something they would use? Or to go downward. I know some of you have 2 and 3-year-olds. Is praise something that you would use with them? What about showing interest? Is that something that seems to be important to them? So almost everything in the program is useful for younger kids and definitely useful for older kids. So of course we have a teen version of the program where the only real difference is the videos feature teens and teen type scenarios, and there's a shift to a bit more of an emphasis on monitoring as a new set of strategies. Okay, so let's do some role playing. So at each of your tables, can I get you to pick a partner? Great. Partners, okay. Perfect. Partners? Okay, now in each of your groups, can someone decide to be the parent first? So parent? Parent? Lori, are you going to? Okay. Thank you. Parent here? Okay, Allison, thank you. Here? Thank you. Parent? Okay. Parents here? Parent. And kids? Kids. Now, those of you who are the parent, what I want you to do is just talk about an example of a situation at your house where you could use a transitional warning, 10 minutes, when this television program is over, it's going to be time to get ready for bed, and a when then. When you're dressed and ready for bed, we'll sit down and read a story or something like that. So just think of a transitional warning and a when then. Might be helpful to look back at the planning that you did a little bit earlier. Look for some examples of situations. You can just kind of read that off, make it a little bit easier. Talk about that for a second and raise your hands when you're ready. You've got the situation ready. Okay. Everybody ready? Got a kind of situation in mind? Okay, ready? Got a situation in mind? Okay, so who are the kids? Okay, this is an evening when it's a little bit more fun because you can, when your parent gives you a transitional warning, you can complain one time. Just once, short one, you can whine, you can say that's not fair, nobody else has to go to bed at 9, but that's it. So just do it that one time and then do whatever it is that your parents are asking you to do. Don't make it difficult, okay? So one argue so that parents can practice ignoring. Okay, so everybody ready? So get up out of your chairs and move around the room. And when you're ready, go ahead and start. And when you're done, raise your hand. Great, great. Heard a lot of good transitional warnings and when-thens out there. Okay, everybody ready? Okay, come on back to your tables. I'd give you a little bit more time than that, but not very much. Not very much. Now, those of you who were the kid, tell your parent a couple things that you thought they did well. You had a really nice, firm tone of voice. You didn't let me suck you into an argument. I really appreciated the fact that you let me finish reading this story first, or whatever it was. So give them some feedback on things you thought they did well. Okay, and let's come back together as a large group. And we'd switch now, and we would just go right through the very same exercise. Let me just say that it's the rule of thirds when it comes to this kind of role-playing. There are a third of the parents in a group who will do a high-quality role-play. They'll actually act, they'll practice the strategies in that way, and get a lot out of it, I think. There's another third of the parents who will kind of talk their way through it. They'll think about the situation, they'll plan it, and they'll kind of walk through it, but they don't really engage in kind of real role-playing. And that's probably a useful strategy for them. And there are other parents who will just talk about it. They'll think about the situation, they'll look at their sheets, they'll probably visualize it, but they won't actually engage in practice. And that may be all we can do with that particular group of parents. And they probably won't get as much out of it, but nonetheless, it's about the best you can do in this situation. The ideal thing would be to actually have an opportunity to practice with kids, which you can do if you link up with a kids group. But in this situation, we try to give them as much of an opportunity to think about a specific situation, to visualize it, hopefully, to think about exactly what they would do or say, and I think they're better prepared to actually try it at home if they do that. So lastly, we're going to finish homework, and when we're done with homework, then you can go home. I apologize. I know it's hot in here, and it's a hot room, so we'll get outside. Probably some lovely weather out there waiting. Okay, does everyone have a homework sheet and a pencil? Okay, so we got their pencils. Got a homework sheet. Good, great. Pencils. What I'd like you to do is to think of some situations at your house this week where you could use transitional warnings and when-thens, maybe at bedtime, maybe just before kids come to the dinner table, maybe before they do their chores, and to practice this week. So write those down right now. And again, out of role, as a leader, you want to go around and really encourage people to write those things down. If people make that commitment, even on paper, the likelihood of them following through goes up. So encourage parents to actually write down a couple of examples. Great. Okay, Fiona, that's super. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, everybody got a couple? Lori got one there?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What about if you have parents with very low literacy levels? So writing something
Wouldn't work.
naturally or would be maybe uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lori. There are two things that we've done to try to be helpful in that situation. If we're working in a situation where there's really low literacy, then we've used a homework sheet that looks like this. It's entirely visual. So this strategy you can see is a transitional strategy. In 5 minutes, it's going to be time to get ready for bed. And we walk people through that. And then there's just some different situations where we ask parents to practice that strategy in this week. And we'll walk down and say, okay, what's going on here? And they'll say, well, getting kids dressed. And how about here? Well, meal times. And here when you're in the store. And here bath time. And here bedtime. And so we've used this. And a lot of parents actually really like this strategy because visually the cues are really good. So that's another option. The other one that we sometimes do is to say to parents, if you're like me and you prefer little visual reminders like the ones on your computer screens, which are actually better reminders, is draw a little picture that will remind you of some different situations that you can use this. Maybe a picture of a television, maybe a picture of a bed, maybe a picture of a car. That's actually a better reminder than writing things down. So a couple of different ways you can go. And visual strategies are actually probably better. And actually the drawing and the writing of those and the crafting of those little visual images probably makes them more meaningful again. So a couple things that we've done if literacy is an issue. And actually I sometimes wonder if beyond just the literacy issue, this isn't a more effective set of reminders, the visual cues. So we actually used this protocol in the randomized trial, the 1995 randomized trial that I showed you. And a lot of our leaders still really like to use a purely visual set of homework strategies. Okay, so we want you to practice as many times as you can this week. And again, this is not something that you're going to expect to see a lot of improvement. If this is a new strategy, kids are sometimes going to respond to that. Where could you post those homework sheets? Where have people found that it's a good reminder to you? Refrigerator? Yeah. Remember a dad who scanned his into his computer and he used it each week as his screensaver. Sort of kind of like that idea. Okay. Those of you whose partners aren't with us tonight, any strategies that you found over the last couple of weeks that have been helpful in talking about or sharing what we've been working on here? And we take a couple of minutes and just talk about that, particularly as the sessions progress, things that parents have found helpful that they want to share with others. This is often kind of a fun discussion, too, in terms of that. Those of you whose kids are in the kids group, is there any way that you could use transitional warnings and when-then strategies on the way home tonight? And get parents a chance to think concretely about that. And for those of you whose kids are not in the kids group, what's the first chance that you'll get to try these strategies out? And again, a little bit of a chance to chat about that. And Luther, is Luther not here this week? Is somebody let him know we missed him and see if... Great, that would be helpful. And we've got if you want to share one of our homework planning sheets with him, and I gave him a sense of what we were working on. Probably we should have internet links to do this kind of stuff, and I suspect we have a smart internet version of the program that's involved in a large trial now, so I suspect eventually we'll have a way to make Luther more involved in the program virtually if we can't make it out. Okay, so I'm going to go down and let the kids group leaders know that we've finished for the evening, and we'll see you guys all next week, 7 o'clock. Okay, so end of the session. I think we probably have a minute, two. Any last questions just before we close? Okay. I know it's been hot in here, and I apologize for that, but I appreciate that you guys hung in here.
On subject matter, for instance, bereavement.
Have we done any parenting groups on? We have not.
Subject
No,
areas.
no. But parents often like groups that are content specific. They really like the one-session workshops that deal with sibling conflict and homework and so forth.
Okay.
We haven't done one specifically around the issue of bereavement, but it would be an interesting issue to think about. One of the things that I showed in the presentation that I gave yesterday were results of several large systematic reviews, meta-analyses that showed that there are quite significant improvements in internalizing problems for kids whose parents participate in these kinds of programs. And so you can imagine a much broader set of applications where the relationship building parts of the program and the transitional management parts of the program might be really important at a time when families are under a lot of stress or there's been trauma. But we have not done that, and I don't know of any research. There may well be some. But the impact, I think you can see, of a parenting program on relationships for kids is often really powerful. And for kids who are anxious, for kids who have fears, for kids who are worried, part of the interventions for those kids are often creating hierarchies and motivating kids to work through difficult situations and creating an opportunity for kids to talk about issues with their parents. And the skills that are worked on in parent training, even though these programs evolved more specifically for kids with externalizing problems, I think have a much broader application. And we'll probably see in the next few years some trials starting to emerge with those kind of applications. But that would be a really interesting one. Be a really interesting one.
Miami as a research.
You've got a ton of people who run the COPE program is run extensively down here in the the family unit that Bill Pelham heads up at Florida International.
Do you have prospective parents that come to these kinds of workshops?
Okay, that's a great question. Prospective parents. I remember we ran a parenting group. It was out of school one evening. We had a large group, and we were going around talking to parents on information night about why they were here. And there was a couple, and they said, we're here because we're thinking about starting a family, and we thought it'd be a good idea to take a parenting course before we do. And one of the other parents on the other side, it's not too late. I think that's a terrific idea. Oftentimes people aren't motivated to do that. It's really when difficulties start to reach a point that families cross a threshold where they say, I just have to do something about this. It's unfortunately when parents are often in trouble before they're motivated to seek it out. I think it would be a terrific set of strategies to teach prospectively. But we haven't formally done that. I think you'd probably have to make high school kids go through it or something like that and make it part of the curriculum and require that they demonstrate all of the skills as a part of their testing or something like that.